right when I cough.
Sorry.
Reels.
All right, so we want to welcome Donny Dust, you guys, to Frontier Middle School. He's going to be doing a virtual assembly for us, talking about some of his times in the outdoors, some of his experiences with creativity and hard work and resilience. And he has done a lot of amazing things, but I'm going to let him tell you guys about that and explain more about himself. Donny?
All right. Well, hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I greatly appreciate it. I know in these times, this is kind of something we all have to kind of adapt and overcome with. But yeah, this is absolutely an awesome experience, and I appreciate you all very much. Keep studying. So a little bit about myself. My name is Donny Dust, and I run a wilderness self-reliance school here in the great state of Colorado. Now, what wilderness self-reliance is something that I've been doing since I was pretty much most of your ages, but I educate people and I teach people how to walk into the wild spaces of not only the great state of Colorado, but all around the world, and teach them how to survive and thrive with very little equipment. And what do I mean by that is really harboring and, kind of fostering our number one and most important survival skill, and that's creativity. But a little bit more about myself. I was born in Michigan, the state that looks like a mitten. I think we all know that. And I moved all around the United States. And then when I was a teenager, I joined the Marine Corps. And then from the Marine Corps, I pretty much traveled all around the world. I've been to about 30 different countries. I've lived with jungle clans all throughout Malaysia and Indonesia. I've lived with Bedouin tribes all throughout different deserts around the Middle East. I've been up to the Arctic, down to South America, and all over Africa. And a lot of my times have really put me in touch with a lot of indigenous peoples. And that's where I learned a lot of the skills and my overall approach to the outdoors, building into my wilderness self-reliance. So one of the things that I do pretty often is I go on these things called earth roams. And earth roams, let me give you a real simple example. I might have a friend drop me off way out in Grand Junction, Colorado, almost on the Utah border, and I'll walk home. And what I'm doing is I'm relying on everything that nature provides me. That's from the water to the food, to the caves that I sleep in, to the resources that are out in the natural environment. And during my time on my earth roam, I let creativity be my number one survival skill. So knowing that, using my creative process, I can create everything from something like this, which is a stone knife. And instead of carrying a steel knife, I'll make and I'll create a stone blade like this, and I'll use it for all of my needs, whether it's processing game, to cutting down wild greens, to digging holes, pretty much everything and anything I would use a common blade for, a common steel knife, I would use my stone blade. Now, I know a lot of people think, well, why don't you just bring a stone blade? Well, what I like to do is I like to really invoke my creative process, and that is creating everything from the clothes that I wear, utilizing animal hides and skins, to making leather water bottles, as well as making candles and torches out of animal fat and sticking it in a bison horn like this. So instead of carrying a flashlight, I carry a lit lantern like this when it gets dark and I have to move from cave to cave. Everything I need comes from the natural environment. That's really instilling that creative process. I'm also curious when I go on these earth roams. What do I mean by curiosity is when I see something, I hear something, or even if I smell something, I want to go and explore what it is. I don't want to stick on the trail and just kind of use what's in front of me. I want to go left, I want to go right, I want to go high, and I want to go low, because curiosity drives us. Just like you're all in school, you're curious about the subjects and different content your teachers are sharing with you. And when you go home and you do more research, that's being curious. And for me, that drives me from place to place. Most of the time when I go out in the natural environments, I always kind of stick by a simple rule that nature will provide everything that I need. And that comes with a lot of training, comes with a lot of experience, comes with a lot of homework and research. In order for me to walk from one side of the state to the other, I have to know what plants I can eat. I have to know about the different threats as far as weather, fires, animal hazards. right now in Colorado, it's hunting season, and there's wild animals that are going all over the place trying to find their mates. That's a very dangerous time for people to be out in the natural environments, because if you interfere with them, you could definitely pose yourself to some sort of harm. So, it really comes down to understanding the natural world. And for me, it's taken a lot of years and a lot of experiences to do that. Now, from this, I've had some pretty amazing experiences and opportunities. I've been on one TV show called Alone, where I was living up in the Arctic for a period of time. And as a matter of fact, this Saturday on the History Channel, my other TV show will be coming out called The Beast. I've worked in television and film for years as a movie consultant. When they do a movie or they start a production into a movie and they need a technical expert into all things kind of ancient technologies as well as survival and outdoors, they call me up and I go work on a movie set. And there's a few times they actually asked me to be, an extra in a movie or play a few small parts. But so my love for the outdoors, my creative process, and my ingenuity into ancient technologies has allowed me to work into the film industry. As well as I've written a couple books. My love, my passions for the outdoors has allowed me to produce one book called Scavenger, which is about a primal lifestyle. It really goes into how I lived in a series of caves all throughout the state of Colorado for about 6 months, and how I went about, drinking from springs and eating only wild foods and really living, as a caveman. They kind of call me the professional caveman. So it was a good time. It was a good experience. And that first book highlights that. And then my second book is called Earth Roaming. And I teach people how I go about living wild, living free, living very minimalistically with little to no resources. I also write for magazines. If there's any writers out there, all you have to do is find what your passion is in life and start writing. I love the outdoors. I love all things about survival. And one of the things that I write about is a skill that I learned called flint knapping. And flint knapping is where I'll take a big piece of stone like this, and I will reduce it down into smaller pieces of stones that are flakes or blades that I could use as a tool, or I can create something like this, which is actually a Paleolithic axe. I can chop down trees, I can carve out canoes, and I can use this tool right here for everything I need from the process of flint knapping. So with that, I write a lot of magazine articles about flint knapping and how you go about surviving in the wilds. My overall experiences, as a 40-year-old guy, have really started when I was your age. Just being curious about the world, understanding that creativity can bring me to a lot of different places, and being open to new opportunities and experiences. And from that, it's given me some great opportunities. One of the opportunities to sit in front of you guys this morning, sharing a little bit about who I am and how I go about doing it. But it's been a great journey. As a matter of fact, I go out this upcoming weekend for about a week to go live out in some caves, film some YouTube videos, and just kind of do what I normally do. And if anyone's on TikTok, I know probably a lot of you are. My son made me get TikTok, but I'm also on the TikTok. I get to share all of my kind of adventures and my fun times on all sorts of social media, and hopefully inspire people to get out there, be a little bit more wild, let creativity guide you, let curiosity guide you, and understand that we are very, very awesome human beings. We are capable of so much. And for me, living out in the bush, living wild, it's just my personal pathway, and it's a journey that I've been blessed to have. So that's kind of it about me. Do you guys have any questions? Feel free to, I guess still raise our hands or just ask a question. I can't really see too well, but let's do it.
All right, Lauren, what's your question?
Have you ever taken your son with you?
Yes, I have. I have 2 sons. I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, and we go out on all sorts of adventures. We'll head out into the bush for maybe a week, and we just kind of hunt and forage and live in caves, and we just go out and have a good time. They are very much, into their own things. They love playing video games and lacrosse, and they, enjoy their schoolwork. But, this is kind of my personal interest and my pathway and journey, but I definitely incorporate them into a lot of things.
Okay. Cleora.
Do you have any pets?
Yes, I have. You say pets?
Yeah, pets.
Pets, yes. I have a dog named Finn, and he kind of looks like a wolf. So when we're out in the woods, he'll do all sorts of things. He'll snatch up ptarmigan and squirrels and bring them back to me, and we'll eat those up. There's been a few encounters with moose where I've been walking through the bush, and all of a sudden a big moose pops up in front of me, and Finn will jump in between myself and the moose and kind of push the moose back. Yeah, Finn is, he's a rescue dog. I rescued him, and now we're just kind of bonded at the hip.
Clara.
If you had a motto, what would it be?
If I had a motto, I think it would be let curiosity guide you. Absolutely. Curiosity has brought us from one continent to another. We've put people on the moon. We now have cars that are self-driving, and that's all because of a curious process of saying, can we do this? You know, when we just think about something, we're only imagining it. But when we actually do it and we create it, then we're actually making it happen. And that's important.
Morgan, what's your question?
What's your favorite part about like going out and surviving and like for a week and stuff?
Yeah, so my favorite part about heading out in the bush and surviving is really just the freedom that I have as far as being independent and knowing that my knowledge, skills, and abilities will ultimately keep me alive. Understanding that certain foods will nourish my body, knowing where the right springs and streams and lakes that I can drink from are going to keep me hydrated, understanding how to build shelters and homes when I'm out in the bush gives me a sense of freedom. And from that, it's kind of a constant pull out into the wild landscapes.
Benton?
When did you start living in the wild, like doing your little adventures?
Yeah, so so I grew up in Highlands Ranch when there was about 50 homes. And when I was in Highlands Ranch, my mother, she would send me out the door and say, I'll see you in a couple of days. She'd give me a can of corn and sometimes a pack of hot dogs. And I would go and live in the different creek beds and build little teepees and shelters, probably from the age of 9 to 10, somewhere around there. And that kind of kicked off those initial kind of journeys and adventures. But really, once I got into the military, they really fostered that idea of, you know, exploring the world, seeing the world, being part of it. And then, yeah, it's just never stopped. It's always been a thing for me.
Clara?
What is the grossest thing you have ever eaten?
Good question. Yeah, so I've eaten a lot of weird things in my days. One time I was in the Philippines, and there was a kind of a ceremony going on, if you will, and they butchered a goat. And one of the things that we ate from the goat was the undigested grass from the goat's stomach, covered in coconut milk. So that was a very unique thing to eat. As well as that same trip, we ripped open a tree, and there's these long Filipino tree worms that grow in these trees, and you just eat those completely raw, and they kind of pop and explode in your mouth. I don't recommend it to anyone. I don't. You can live off it, but it is not a good tasting item to eat.
Okay, Haley, then Charlotte.
Have you ever been like scared that you weren't gonna like survive on one of your trips or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some close encounters with wild animals as far as mountain lions and bears. I've been extremely sick out in the wilds, and all of those things are definitely factors I have to consider. When it turns to winter time out here in the great state of Colorado, that's one of my favorite times to go out, because I have a couple different caves. And I can tell you during those times when it's extremely cold and the snow is coming down, there's a few moments of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And that's when kind of a little bit of, fear creeps in, but it's really what I'm doing after that point. How do I overcome that fear that really drives me to keep going for a couple more days or even for another month? So absolutely. Fear is a constant. You do get scared, but it's how you overcome it.
What's the craziest animal you've encountered?
What's that?
What's the craziest animal you've encountered?
Okay. So it's kind of two of these. One time I was in the mountains here, and I came across a mountain lion kill, and I hadn't eaten in a couple days. So when I came upon its kill, the mountain lion kind of ran off. So, and I do not recommend anyone doing this, please. Do not do this, but it was my opportunity to kind of get a free meal. So I pulled out a quick stone blade, and I cut out a portion of its back strap. And then I took off running as fast as I could with the bloody backstrap, which is a portion of meat from the animal. And then later on, I went back to that same spot, and that mountain lion was there, kind of chomping on it, giving me an evil eye, and then he took off again. So I know that was a very dangerous situation, but you know, that's definitely one. And then I lived in a swamp for a good portion of time with no modern requirements, no tents, no boats, no bows and arrows, no nothing. And there was a lot of alligators, and that was a constant, always going down by the water, trying to catch crayfish and, you know, different fish and turtles and snakes, but there was always gators in the water, and you kind of walk around with a really big stick and test the waters and see what you can come up with. But knowing that gators would snatch you up potentially at the water's edge, or they would come onto land at night where you were sleeping, was definitely a definite concern. And there was a couple of times that happened. You could hear an alligator hissing as it came out of the water, and you're sleeping in a pile of leaves saying, gosh, I hope that doesn't, you know, take my leg and drag me in the water for him and his buddies to eat. But yeah, between alligators, mountain lions, yeah, those are pretty up close and personal.
All right, I have one for you, Donnie.
Yeah, fire away.
I've got about 1,400 students at this school. And as a teacher who has about 250 at a time, we always want to know, as a teacher, if you had to have a message to teach these kids resilience and hard work, how do you put it?
Yeah, resiliency is extremely important. In order for you to become resilient, you must test yourself. And testing yourself is, you know, you directly testing yourself by putting yourself in unique situations, maybe going out when it's cold or exposing yourself to the elements, or the unintentional ones, or maybe you're tested by a family situation or something that could be happening at school. And the easiest thing that I always remember is this, that is just that moment. Things will always get better. Things are never the same forever. And what I do is I accept that there's only one thing that I can control, and that is my response to the world around me. If this, you know, the connection dies out, I can't control that. If a bolt of lightning hits my house, I can't control that. The only thing I can't control is my response. And my response can either be positive or negative. And I always try to make them positive. And from this, it just builds in my ability to adapt to any situation. It builds my ability to adapt and overcome any sort of perceived negative in my life. And that builds into my resiliency. So when somebody, you know, cuts me off when I'm driving, or let's say I can't get a meal that day out in the bush, I don't get mad. I just understand that's the situation. My outlook is positive, and then it makes me work harder to overcome that event if it ever happens again, or it makes me work even harder to overcome that event as it's faced with me right at that moment. So we are the only things, we people are the only ones that can control our responses. And that really comes down to you just accepting that I cannot control the world, I can control my response. And if my response is positive, even in a negative situation, that's resiliency. That's me gaining an aspect of control of my life, dealing with this situation, and moving on forward.
Okay, you guys, I want to thank Donny Dust for coming and doing this for us. I think we should give him a nice, good round of applause, don't you guys?
So much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Donny, we appreciate what you've done for us today.
Indeed.
Good day, man.
You guys have a better one. Study hard, and I'll see you guys in the bush.
Thank you. All right, stop recording.